Golf course open yet?
Yeah, we just a couple of them are in,
Nobody else. Earliest opening.
so they're.
It's Sarah, can you hear? Okay,
Late June, to play golf, they know so.
No, that we got, well, we got really.
Tracy, sound check, are you there?
In the spring, and they've been pumping
I'm
aggressive.
here, Sarah.
Okay, I can hear you just fine. You're up on the screen. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Very good. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and put you on mute. And
Okay.
Wait,
we will start as soon as our quorum is here. So,
Okay.
I will, let me check my emails to see if,
Maybe income.
emails to see if Carrie should be on. So. Right. Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Sarah Amster. I'm the director of the department. We will get started shortly. The planning commission does have a new testimony in front of them that they are working through individually for review. Once Chair Uzal is ready to begin, she will let me know and we'll start the proceedings. Thank you for your patience.
Tracy.
Hi, Tracy.
Yeah.
Are you ready, Sarah?
Now I'm ready.
Now
Thank
you're
you.
ready.
That won't count.
And a call to order the June 11th, 2026 meeting of the Tillamook County Planning Commission. Thank you for your patience. We received some late information and needed to catch up on that. The first order of business tonight is a roll call.
Don LaFrance.
And Gail Uzell.
Guy Seaver.
Megan Gillis. Do we have anybody online?
Not planning commission
Okay.
members.
All right. Okay. There's no old business tonight, so we're gonna move right into new business, which is number 85126000055 PLNG, a request for consolidated review and approval of a tentative subdivision plat for Riverview Meadows Phase 2, a subdivision development comprised of 74 residential lots and 3 tracts, those are tracts D through F, for construction of a water reservoir, designated private open space, and a private road system, respectively, together with geohazard report review request number 851-26000056-PLNG, and a conditional use request number 851-260000139-PLNG, a request to allow for a road encroachment into the 15-foot riparian buffer along Bob's Creek. Located within the city of Nehalem urban growth boundary, the subject property is zone Nehalem Mixed Density Residential, that's NHRM, and is accessed via Riverview Meadows Lane, a private road. The subject property is designated as tax lot 3600 of section 23B, township 3 north, range 10 west of the Willamette Meridian, Tillamook County, Oregon. The applicant and property owner is Carrie Shelton. And proposed Riverview Meadows Phase 2 was previously approved as Riverview Meadows Phases 2 and 3. And these land use decisions expired prior to final plat approval. A sign-up list is being circulated for those who wish to testify and for those who wish to provide their names and addresses so that we may formally notify them of the results of the hearing. Staff will hand out copies of the applicable criteria, and the following are required by ORS 197763. Testimony and evidence must be directed toward these criteria, if applicable, or other criteria in the plan or land use regulations which the person testifying believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity to afford us and other interested persons an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to LUBA on that issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow Tillamook County or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court pursuant to ORS Chapter 197. Any parties entitled to a continuance of this hearing, if anyone provides documents or evidence in support of the application, in addition to what was available at the time that notice of this hearing was provided. In the conduct of quasi-judicial land use hearings, unless there is a continuance, if a participant so requests before the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing, the record shall remain open for at least 7 days after the hearing. ORS 1977636. The order of presentation will be as follows. The staff will summarize the staff report to the extent necessary to enable those present to understand the issues before the commission. Commission members may ask questions of staff, the applicant's presentation, then we'll have public comment, then any rebuttals and further comments from staff. The hearing will then be closed to all testimony. The commission may discuss the issue among themselves and will then make a decision at that time or continue a public hearing until a specified time or take the matter under advisement and announce their recommendation at a specified time. Is there a challenge to the jurisdiction of the Tillamook County Planning Commission to hear this matter? If so, please state the challenge at this time. Are there any conflicts of interest or personal biases to be declared by a commission member? If so, please state the bias or conflict at this time. Have there been any ex parte contacts regarding the upcoming matter that a board member needs to declare? If so, please state the ex parte contacts at this time. Sarah?
Thank you, Madam Chair. All right, so.
Thank you.
Yes, I need to take a look at one thing here real quick. Thank you, everyone. For the record, my name is Sarah Absher. I am the Director of the Tillamook County Department of Community Development and am here tonight to present to you Riverview Meadows Phase 2. One clarifying point I need to make on page 14 of the staff report. I did have a scrivener's error. I put in parentheses the 45 square foot disturbance area within the riparian buffer zone of Bob's Creek. I put 45 square feet, but I missed the 1 on the 15. It says 3 by 5 when it should read 3 by 15. So I just want to call that out right away and apologize for that discrepancy. Okay. Go ahead and planning commission members do have hard copies of the slide presentation, and I will go ahead and also make sure that it's posted online after tonight's proceedings. So a little bit of background, and with me this evening is Tillamook County Public Works Director Chris Leahy. We together, along with our staff, the city of Nehalem, have reviewed this proposal. As Chair Uzell mentioned, this subdivision was previously approved by the Tillamook County Planning Commission in 2022 and in 2023 as phases 2 and 3. They broke it up into 2 phases. Phase 2 consisted of 38 lots. Phase 3 consisted of 36 lots. Both of those total the 74 lots that you are hearing about this evening. The applicant continued to work with the city and others on compliance requirements largely related to water infrastructure. And in the midst of that work, it is our understanding that the tentative approval decisions expired. And in land use, there is not an opportunity to reinstate a decision. You have to start over. So we have a consolidated review of what was phases 2 and 3 now into just simply phase 2. With that, we are also required to go back through the geologic hazard report review process. In the record are updates and addendums to the reports that you reviewed back in 2022 and 2023. There are some notable differences between what the Planning Commission previously reviewed in 2022 and 2023 and today. In addition to the consolidation, the city of Nehalem has gone through an extensive land use program ordinance update, and that was largely driven by Senate Bill 406. So as you are aware, all of Tillamook County cities and the county for unincorporated communities were required under Senate Bill 406 to amend our zoning codes to allow for middle housing types as outright permitted uses. That includes single-family dwellings, accessory dwelling units, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, and cottage clusters. With the work that the city of Nehalem did, they also decided to do some zoning designation work. So the zoning designation of this property is different. It's mixed use residential, whereas before it was, I believe, a low residential zone. Part of the work that they did under Senate Bill 406 was to consolidate some of their zoning districts. So that is what drove the change in that work of what you saw previously and what you are seeing today. With that, when they did their code amendments, they added a riparian buffer zone and additional language that now requires conditional use review and approval for work within a riparian corridor. And so we have a conditional use application and request that has been added to this review process as a result of those code updates. Also, one of the requirements that came to our attention was because of the intersection work required with Riverview Lane, which is the new access road at that intersection with North Fork Road, which is a county road, and that is the development. You have Riverview Meadows Lane and Riverview Lane Drive, excuse me. They both provide access to the Riverview Meadows development, and they both connect to North Fork Road. One is a little bit further to the southwest and one is a little bit further to the northeast. The improvements that were required by Public Works at the southwest intersection also happened to be in a mapped area of special flood hazard. So a floodplain development permit was required for that work. Part of the additional testimony that you have received this evening is a copy of that approved floodplain development permit from the city. And then just with an overall ordinance framework change, a lot of the chapters and sections were renumbered as a result of that work that the city did as part of Senate Bill 406. So going back to multi-jurisdictional coordination. So in working with the applicants, here is a list of all of the jurisdictions that have had a role in review of this proposal before you. Due to the intergovernmental agreement that still exists between Tillamook County and the city of Nehalem, community development provides land use planning services for properties within the urban growth boundaries. The reason why the city did the floodplain development permit review is because the IGA requires the city to do that work. We do not do that work, which is why it is not part of your review process this evening. So I wanted to show a couple of aerial photos of the property. You can see you can see Bob's Creek, and you can see where North Fork Road traverses. It follows the river in that area of the development. You can also see where build out of phase 1 has occurred, and then phase 2 is that large kind of part rectangular, part irregular shaped curve of the property, which is roughly 21.88 acres. It is identified as tax lot 3600. So all of phases 2 and 3, which is now phase 2, that consolidated 74 lots and 3 tracts, will all be located on tax lot 3600. One of the things that is noted in the record that Director Leahy will speak to later is that the road system has been constructed since the approvals in 2022 and 2023. So that is why you actually in this aerial photograph see the road system for the 74 lots. This is a screenshot of the updated City of Nehalem zoning map. So you can see the yellow, you can see where Riverview Meadows phase 1 is, and you can see the mixed use residential, which is the RM. It is that yellow shaded with no hash marks in there. I went ahead and I included another map, which is the old zoning map, because the county's GIS has not updated our map to reflect Nehalem's zone changes. But why I wanted to include this is because it's important to note that the property in the northern region does border farm and forest zones. So that is something that is also addressed in the staff report, especially because there is those buffer requirements as part of the review. The city of Nehalem still refers to the 1972 Dagami Bulletin for areas of geologic hazard. You can see the approximate site location. Those triangles and dots identify those mapped areas of geologic hazard. And then just to provide more of a clear map that the county uses, which is part of Dagami's open file that we adopted a couple of years ago. This is that nice updated digital layer. You can see those areas of orange, various shades of orange that still identify those mapped areas of geologic hazard on this property with a little bit greater specificity and definition. And then applicable standards. So we've got a pretty lengthy staff report. There are standards that must be met and there are criteria that must be met. planning commission's decisions are based on criteria. Criteria do go back to the standards to make sure that the demonstration that the standards are met with the criteria review and that it all can be met either now or through conditions of approval. So the staff report dated June 4th addresses each of these sections specifically. And I'm just gonna do an overview of that. So we talked about the mixed density residential zone, that change resulting from Senate Bill 406, which we were obligated to make those changes to in all of our land use programs. With that, looking at the street standards for 157402, the plats identify 50-foot road right-of-ways, grades at 12% for proposed construction. All of the road system is interconnected, as you could see by that aerial photograph that I showed. The Nehalem Bay Fire District and the city have reviewed their parts of the proposal direct.
Riverview Meadows, phase
Provide
two,
additional comments
like Donnie.
for just a moment. I'm gonna go mute. I'm gonna ask the phone ending in 6839 to please mute yourself. And I can do that also for you. Okay, there we go. Go back here. Okay, thank you. Riverview Meadows Lane has served as the primary access to the Riverview Meadows development that was constructed as part of phase 1. In previous reviews, there's been a lot of attention to that road, the curve of the road, the grade, the limited sight distance, and part of the second phase review was the requirement of a secondary access. And that was largely triggered due to fire and life safety requirements that when you reach a certain threshold of a number of lots, you are required by law to provide a secondary access. And that access is that southwestern connection to North Fork Road, which is identified as Riverview Drive. As part of the applicant's proposal, they are proposing to make Riverview Meadows Lane now the secondary access and make Riverview Drive that primary access. With that, there is, Director Lady can talk more about this later, but also there is an updated traffic impact study, some of those elements that are in this section. In terms of the land division section that is outlined in the staff report, I would note that there is one flag lot, lot 89, that does meet the minimum lot width and requirements, not only of the zone, but those provisions for lots within that section. The stormwater drainage and grading. So those have been reviewed by Tillamook County Public Works from the city, as well as utility lines and facilities. There is a comp plan analysis review on pages 4 through 6 of the staff report. With that, public service provider and facility improvement letters have been provided by those multi-jurisdictional cooperative agencies. Those are in the record. Those include the city of Nehalem, Nehalem Bay Wastewater, and the fire department. In terms of the section 157440 for geologic hazards, as I mentioned just a bit ago, we did receive addendums to those initial reports. With that, in the recommended conditions of approval, the lots have been renumbered as a result of this new plat, and the requirements for site-specific geologic hazard reports have been carried over. Those were previously approved by the Planning Commission. I have carried those over as recommendations for this request and have identified what those lot numbers are now. And what it is it's the lots that are on the eastern side of the development, where if you look at the flats, there's some steep topography, right? Because you've got kind of a flat bench and then it slopes down. It is those lots that are part of that sloped area on the east side where those site-specific geologic hazard reports would be required should the Planning Commission approve this request. Based on my review of the addendums to the initial geologic hazard report and going back through that report, staff still feels like the addendums with the conformance letters for plans and foundation digouts for the remainder of the lots is still appropriate. And just because of the flatter benched areas and where they are at, staff did not find that site-specific geologic hazard reports for those areas could be warranted unless the planning commission feels differently. I'm happy to make that adjustment. With the riparian vegetation and small streams, as mentioned, this, for the 45 square feet of work within the riparian buffer zone that is 15 feet, conditional use application has been submitted for your review. With that, the applicants have provided a copy of their DSL concurrence letter for the work in that area of that intersection, because there have also been identified some potential mapped wetlands in that area. With that, the Department of Fish and Wildlife has been working with the applicants on their riparian mitigation plan. I know the applicant will speak more about that and the status of where that is at. The other thing to note is that the application does talk about discharge of water into Bob's Creek. So I'm sure that may be of interest to you, and suggested if that's something you'd like to touch on, get some additional information from the applicant on that. Section 157.44202, which is the buffers adjacent to EFU zoned property. So as I showed the zone map from the county that identifies that this property is surrounded by natural resource zone property. This section specifically refers to farm zone property. And on the plat, you can see the applicants are proposing to maintain that where they had before a 50-foot road right of way that will serve as the buffer and also adhere to that setback requirement for lots. And then with that, there are the specific conditional use decision criteria, and then also the criteria for the subdivision itself. So in the mixed use residential zone, here are the standards for the lots. In review of the plat, staff finds that the lots meet the minimum lot size and dimensions required. And then the decision criteria for the conditional use also tie back to the riparian section, which is 157.442 for additional standards. The applicant has provided findings to demonstrate that the criteria listed in 157.50705 have been met, largely with focus on these intersection improvements are required as part of Tillamook County Public Works review of the proposed development. They have completed their wetland delineation. They're working with ODF&W on that mitigation for Bach Creek. And then with that, I just wanted to go ahead and pull this out of the staff report. So I think one of the things that is important here is just that development or improvements be directed away from adjacent streams and drainage corridors. This intersection is close to Bob's Creek. So again, just going back to the mitigation piece of this proposal and the need for the improvements at this intersection. And then we talked about the geologic hazard section and went back through the findings on that. Again, the site-specific reports, and then making sure that those conformance letter and inspection documents for a footings inspection for the foundations is on. So then can go to the subdivision criteria before we move on to public works. So the decision criteria for the subdivision and the findings are outlined on pages 16 and 17 of the staff report. Copies of that are in the staff report and on the table in the back. So just want to confirm that the lot layout and dimensions meet the standards and the criteria of this section. Setbacks for new development will be determined as part of the zoning review for development of each of the individual lots in the future. And those lots will have to meet the development standards and allowable uses of the mixed residential zone. And so we will do that review at the time of proposed development. the 50-foot buffer is adhered to from the farm zone. As mentioned earlier, there's documentation in the record regarding facilities, adequacy of facilities to serve Riverview Meadows Phase 2 as part of the recommended conditions of approval. Service provider letters for water, sewer, and fire will all be required at the time of zoning and building permit review for each individual lot in the future, as well as those requirements to satisfy the geologic hazard report and section of the city's code. And then with that, the conditions, there is some follow-up work. Some of the improvements have already been done and installed. There's a letter from the Nehalem Bay Wastewater Agency that verifies that their improvement requirements have been satisfied. Installation requirements have been satisfied. But should the planning commission choose to approve this request again, there are recommended conditions of approval that still require follow-up from the city, from Tillamook County Public Works for those outstanding construction requirements that have not yet been completed or inspected. So with that, I'll turn it over to the Director Leahy.
So they did a updated traffic impact study. That's fine. There's no issues with that. The intersection has been built. We approved that. It's been permitted back in February of 2026. Was not aware that the roads were being built, so we had no opportunity to inspect these roads. So when you come in here, as I start going back through the plans, because we do now have easements, we already have construction of the culverts that were in place. The construction of the road is been done. All the stuff has been built from the road department point of view. But we did go through and found one culvert that looked like it really close to being the easement, or close to being just outside the easements. One of those we were asking that so record drawings show the portion of the newly constructed storm line between lots 68 and 69 near the intersection with Pluto Drive and Kinley indicates the line is very close to the proposed easements. The applicant needs to modify the drainage easement between the two lots or provide a letter that the drainage pipe can be maintained without working outside the easement. The difficult to see when you shoot, it was at the center line of the pipe is on the side of the pipe, the other side of the pipe, which I couldn't tell. Certainly the surveyor would know that. We get through the process here. We wanted a stormwater management plan. How are we going to actually manage that stormwater? And the document should be attached to the CCNRs so that they've established a plan to maintain in the future. The same thing with the roads, some type of management plan added to the CCNRs. And then the declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions should also address road and stormwater facility maintenance. We're also asking for road testing results to us prior to plat approval because they've already been built. We did get a letter from Jason Morgan, the engineer of record on this one, and also from the geoprofessional that does talk about that, but there were no inspection results actually submitted. So I ended up in an email.
They have a copy of that.
Following that was asking for a little bit, modified that slightly. Okay. This is the email that's there. And this was applicant must submit field. It modifies the condition of approval to state applicant must submit field inspection reports for all completed portions of the subdivision, should be roads. Tillamook County Public Works may require post-construction inspections, including not limited to core samples and potholing. Final plat approval will be contingent on satisfactory inspections approved by Public Works. We did go out to the site. There's not an issue. We don't have any issues with the storm drainage. Understand that there's been significant rain events and that worked out pretty well. So no issues with the culvert system. We're kind of beyond this. Really, a lot of this talks about final plat approval, which is really beyond this, but very unusual to have everything built before this stuff has been approved. So it's kind of a little bit at a loss on this one. So no inspections on the roads. And we just need to see something like that. Just want to be on record that we need that so we don't move the goalpost. Good way to say that?
Yeah.
That's all I have.
I have a question for them. Chris, my memory of this these applications going through before we talked a good bit about the storm drainage, ditch that runs out there. There's an undersized culvert that goes under the road, or a failing culvert. I can't remember you. I think my memory was that you were kind of had on a wish list to replace that. The possibility of kind of even rerouting Bob's Creek into a more proper channel and
Yeah, we're definitely on a high level, really outside of this. So Bob's Creek has been heavily there used to be a bridge. Bob's Creek used to drain under the Hill River Road through a sub 20-foot bridge. That Bob's Creek had been modified further upstream, and it actually split the channels into an irrigation. So when that split, Bob's Creek, instead of going under a single bridge, now goes through culverts underneath the Hill Road. Ideally, really outside this, that a future restoration project would be able to restore Bob's Creek and move it back into more of an original channel, put a bridge over it like it used to be. I think that was from the best interest. And that might be in the conversation that we.
yeah, that's, I remember.
It's a wish list.
You know, I can't get out of my head that this is essential habitat, salmon habitat. At that low, it's probably rearing habitat. I understand they spawn further up. And 15-foot buffer
That's what the city requires.
for, and I tried to find something in the, I mean, I saw, Bob Bradley's letter approving at least the mitigation
Yeah.
piece around, and I'm guessing that mitigation piece was involving with the stormwater issues coming down.
It had to deal with, the road started to encroach into the, into Bob's
Into the
Creek. The
buffer.
question was how much? And that's where we, in the original, they needed to go through, start talking to ODF. That work has been done. They've got a mitigation plan in effect. So the work as far as getting the wetlands through that study, the work as far as coordinating with ODFW, that preparatory work has been done.
And the other thing I was trying to remember about, and we may have talked, and we can talk to the applicant later, about this, but there was some discussion about, in their CCNRs, maybe some limitation of fertilizer use or chemical use on land or something like that, knowing what the drainage is like into Bob's Creek. Do you remember any of that?
There was a discussion with it. I don't know if that ever made it into the CC. I did not look at it, but I know, I do recall that conversation, because of the essential salmonid, salmonid,
Yeah.
habitat that was, certainly discussed in the meeting, but I don't know if I don't believe it ever.
I can ask you.
It wasn't part of the conditions,
Right.
but a recommendation for it to be in the CCMRs.
Yeah.
I think is where we ended up with that.
I would agree with that.
So the city's 15-foot buffer overrides
Correct.
state lands.
Home rule.
Wow.
Mhm. And I would say that's not uncommon for cities. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Are there any more questions for staff? Okay, we'll have the applicant's presentation.
So they are online, Madam Chair. So we'll go ahead and stop sharing and go ahead and let them.
Good evening. My name is
One
Tracy
moment.
Brown.
One moment, Tracy, let me get rid of some of this stuff so that we can see you. There we go. Go ahead.
Good evening.
Okay.
My name is Tracy Brown. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. And we also have tonight Kerry Sheldon, and he's the developer of the project. And he actually just informed me by text that Vern Scoville just passed away yesterday. I didn't know that, and it's unfortunate. So Vern was kind of the previous owner of some of this property, and I believe developed phase 1 of the Riverview Meadows project. So as Sarah went through, I'm just going to do a little bit of background and then talk about the new application. So as she mentioned, the original phase 2 application was approved in October of 2022, and phase 3 was approved in June of 2023. You know, at that time, the city code had both the expiration of both of those applications within 1 year with the ability to request a 1-year extension. As you may have seen on the chronology on my staff or my narrative, there's been an extensive amount of work that's occurred on the site, including working with the city of Nehalem on the water reservoir project. Probably in the scheme of things, that 1 or 2 year timeframe may have been unrealistic because it took up to 3 years to get the approval from the city of Nehalem on the water reservoir. But that's water under the bridge, so to speak. We're here today. The proposed 85,000 gallon water reservoir that the applicant is constructing will be tied into the city's water system, and it's designed to improve water pressure for not only his development, but also phase 1 of Riverview Meadows, and it will be filled by the city's existing reservoir, and it will backflow and provide additional pressure downstream outside the Riverview Meadows development. So it's an overall benefit to the city of this infrastructure. So to date, all of the underground piping, road construction, paving, stormwater improvements, any preliminary site grading, and mitigation plantings along Bob's Creek have been completed. So we're still waiting to get the final approval of the plantings from ODF&W, but that should be forthcoming shortly. So on the new application, as Sarah mentioned, the zoning designations changed a little bit. I just looked up my old narrative, and the uses in the previous zone were fairly similar to what they are allowed today. So it didn't make that much of a difference. And actually, in a lot of ways, because the code was updated, it was a lot more clear and we'll say objective to go through and review it regarding compliance with the code. Previously, the language was probably a little more wishy-washy and not quite as clear and objective as it is today. Staff report, I think Sarah did a great job of analyzing the code criteria and standards. And as her conclusions are that the project complies with all the requirements of the mixed density residential zone, street standards, the land division standards, stormwater drainage, utility and geotechnical requirements, riparian vegetation requirements, and the buffers to the EFU property that surrounds it around the north side, and all of the subdivision requirements and criteria. As she mentioned, one thing that wasn't part of the original 2 applications was the conditional use permit request. And that came up during our kind of initial scoping of the this new application, and it has to do with there's a small encroachment of 3 feet deep by 15 foot wide along of the road in that 15-foot buffer along Bob's Creek. And as mentioned, we did a mitigation plan. There's 6 different native plant trees and shrubs that were planted for a total of 160 plants. So it goes way beyond just the plantings regarding that encroachment. There's 3 different areas that were planted, and some of it had to do further up the road where there used to be, I guess, an old manufactured home or trailer that was removed. And so there was some additional plantings put in there. And some of the plantings included cedar trees. So it'll hopefully, as those grow up, it will provide more of a, shading of the creek, and, hopefully improve the habitat functions of that creek. We did receive, today, a letter, so the three items that were included in the kind of the last minute details were the ODF and W, or the, I'm sorry, the Department of Land, State Lands, wetland delineation approval. And there was also the letter from David Dunn regarding his concerns about the uses that would be allowed in the subdivision. So I did a look at the previous narrative that I produced and the allowed uses, and the code, looked at the previous code, and under that code, single family residences or duplexes were allowed previously, and they're still allowed under the new code. We wanted to say today that, you know, the applicant's intention is just to build single family dwellings and allow potentially ADUs with those dwellings. So he doesn't have any intention to construct duplexes or even necessarily permit those unless he is required to by state law. We did look at this a little bit, and he's intending to note that in the CCNRs that it would be a limited to single family and ADUs. So that's kind of hopefully that will give Mr. Dunn some peace of mind that, you know, and I did look at the code of phase 1 of Riverview Meadows, which I believe he has purchased a lot, and the code, when it was approved, also allowed duplexes. I don't think anybody's built duplexes up there, and maybe the CCNRs has, you know, that restricted that, but it was allowed under the code at the time. So that's kind of our intent there. So as we reviewed my narrative, as you reviewed that and the staff report, we believe the application complies with all of the applicable criteria and standards of the City of Nehalem Development Code. And at this point, we respectfully request that the Planning Commission approve the application. Actually, one thing to note, I had a text from the owner saying that streetlights were put up yesterday and they were powered. So last night was the first night where the new streetlights are lighting the new road, and kind of awaiting, you know, the final, we'll say, blessing of the various agencies, so you can get the final plat. We did look at all of the conditions, recommended conditions in the staff report, and we agree with all of those, and we'll get on the various testing requirements that Chris has noted in his recommendations to the Planning Commission. So we're in agreement with that. And at this point, if you have any questions for me, I'd like to try to answer those.
Are there questions for the applicant?
Who's this gentleman again?
What's that?
The owner. Yeah, the developer.
Excuse me. We can't have audience right now.
This is David Dunn, who had the letter. Yeah, he asked, mentioned my name.
Well,
I had.
You'll get your chance. Sarah, I guess, well, I'll wait and ask you
When it's my turn again.
when it's your turn
Thank
again.
you.
Yeah. Are there any questions for the applicant? None? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I thought you went to turn the air conditioner on.
There we go. Yeah, all right. All right. Mr. Dunn.
Hi, like me sit here?
Yeah, and please state your name and address for the record.
David Dunn, my current address is 36445 New Kearney City Road in Nehalem. And I submitted a letter, apparently you you got that, because there was some, but I received a letter from the planning commission. And that was kind of confusing to me because, I bought that lot up there with, maybe the realtors were not up to speed, but, then everything in the next phase was gonna be single family as well. Now, it sounds to me like, multifamily is permitted but not required, is that correct? Okay, I think that's what the gentleman was alluding to, is that it's not necessarily, and I had a conversation with, Terry Sheldon, because he was named in this, and, the Public Works Director in Nehalem told me I should contact him because I was concerned about when the water system would be up and running. Because it would affect, he's my contractor, it would affect our building. You know, if there isn't adequate water pressure, it's gonna be a considerable, more expensive to build, and then I kind of wish I'd had that information before I purchased the lot with basically my life savings. You know, I'm not getting any younger, and this is gonna be my final home, and so, you know, I kind of fell in love with the area. It's very beautiful up there. But if it's gonna be higher density than what I was told when I was thinking of purchasing there, then, you know, it kind of changes the dynamic of the community. There's more traffic and then also, I was a little confused because, you know, we're talking about an application for a plat and for, you know, all of these things, and it was gonna require, the roads and the infrastructure. Well, that stuff was already there. So I realized that the original, permits had expired, but the developer already complied with the, you know, the zoning as it was, and put in the roads and, I guess he paid for the reservoir and, the water, and everything is stubbed into each one of those lots. So if if a lot that was designed to be single family is now gonna be a fourplex, I'm assuming that the developer is gonna have to replumb those lots, you know, to accommodate each individual structure. Now, it doesn't affect me directly, because I'm in phase one. But I don't know, it just seemed kind of strange. It seemed like maybe the state is kind of forcing your hand with whatever the new legislation that, you guys mentioned. That, you know, higher density and all that, but, you know, the thing was already started. It was already, I mean, the roads were in, all the infrastructure was in underground. And I just felt like Mr. Sheldon had a good point when I spoke to him. You know, the public works guy said I should talk to him about when the reservoir, we had a fairly long conversation, and there's a lot of frustration in his voice about kind of changing the rules, you know, when, during the period of time from when his first permits expired, and then the new permits are on the table. So I just came here to support his position, and you know, I mean, chances are it's all gonna work out fine, but, I just felt like maybe I wasn't told everything that was gonna happen with the property behind me when I bought my lot. That's why I came here. I just came here kind of to support, Mr. Sheldon's position, because, you know, I think we were in agreement that he complied with what was required at the time. It seems like the expiration is a technicality. I don't know. And you guys got a copy of my letter apparently, or something?
Yes.
All right, so did I misstate anything in the letter that I submitted?
But let's be clear, our job here is to take your testimony, not to have a
Okay.
conversation.
Well, I don't know if I had all my facts straight. You know, I just know what I was told by realtors and residents up there and the developer of phase two. And, you know, some of this doesn't sound right to me. Okay,
Are there any questions for Mr. Dunn? Thank you.
thank you.
Is there any I can't see online. Is
So we have two participants online, that are not the applicant or owner. We have a phone number ending in 6839 and a number ending in 2461. Madam Chair, if any of those two folks would like to provide public comment, that are not part of the applicant's team, they could unmute themselves pressing *6 and ask to speak and provide testimony. If we want to give them a moment.
Yeah.
Those two numbers, if you would like to provide public comment, you can press *6 to unmute yourself and provide testimony.
All right.
This pattern.
Does the applicant have any rebuttal to the comments, the public comments?
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would say, it's my understanding, talking to the developer, he's hoping to get the final reservoir done in the next maximum of 60 days. So hopefully that will happen. And then, yeah, not really. I mean, I don't know what Mr. Dunn was told by realtors, but the intent of the developer is to build and have built single-family residences up there. That's it.
Thank you. Any further questions for the applicant? Sarah, do you have more?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a couple of
Thank
comments.
you.
So to start out, I would say that in land use, as I mentioned at the beginning of the hearing proceedings, there is not a way with Oregon's land use system to reinstate decisions. And so if an application expires, a new application is reviewed according to the rules that are now in effect. Right, so you can't go forward, you can't go backwards. You gotta work with whatever's in place at the time of the application submittal for any type of land use request has to comply with what the city has currently adopted. These changes did occur between the time the tentative plat approvals were previously done. Senate Bill 406 was passed by the state legislature in 2023. That being said, part of those rules are that you cannot prohibit middle housing types through CCNRs. They don't have to require it. They don't have to require middle housing to be built, meaning the developer, but they also cannot prohibit it. Right? It's just, these are allowable residential uses that exist. So with any new development going forward, CCNRs do not allow prohibitions of middle housing types. And that's part of the middle housing codes for the state of Oregon. So I appreciate the testimony we've heard this evening from the public and from the applicant. Let me just say, the department, our role is not to require that middle housing be built. Our role is to require that local and state laws adhere to. So that is the approach we'll take. It may very well be that these lots are improved and built with the vision of single family and ADUs. But the rules that are in place today are the rules that we must adhere to.
That also means that if I purchase a lot and I own the lot and I want to put a duplex on the lot, there's nothing that could stop me.
The CCNRs cannot stop you.
Or I could put a
Now,
triplex or whatever.
right. Whatever those allowed middle housing types are, you have to meet whatever the requirements are. So, I did not do this work in preparation of this hearing, but for an example, the county requires additional land area for 3 or 4 units. I have not done the analysis of these lots to see if these lots would qualify if the city of Nehalem did the same thing in terms of requiring additional land area. And I don't want to speculate in terms of what that would look like. But I
Well,
think
as we know, Sarah, you can do some pretty creative cottage clusters on a small lot.
you can, but there's also minimum lot size requirements. You
Right.
still have setbacks. You still have to provide those service provider letters. There's a lot that goes into
Right.
that.
But the general point is it can't be prevented by the developer.
It cannot be prevented.
Right.
Right, and that's state law.
Yeah.
So for this, yes, so as part of the conditions of approval in receiving a copy of those new CCNRs for phase two, as we are now calling it, part of our role, Director Lady and I and the city I will share a copy of the CCNRs once I get them for final plat review. And there's various things we're all going to look for. Public Works and the city are going to look for maintenance and various specifications for stormwater, the things that they are looking at from that utility infrastructure standpoint and ongoing maintenance. I will be looking at those housing compliance pieces, right? And then, we'll all look to see, as before, we cannot require those mitigation pieces for Bob's Creek beyond what the code allows us to ask for, but certainly we'll take a look and see if the applicant has been amenable to adding that additional language that you discussed.
Well,
Fertilizers.
the applicant was, I appreciate all the plannings, trying to protect, keep that
Right,
creek, part of the
Yeah.
creek pool, but my concern, I remember looking at it back whenever, is the drainage into that creek and the use of chemicals and the development.
yeah. So, yes, so that is the long and short of it, just to add that clarification.
Yes, go ahead.
Just to clarify things that, this is a county planning commission decision,
Right,
but the zone is the city of Nehalem zone.
correct.
And so we have to comply with the city of Nehalem's zoning requirement.
That is correct. And even with the county in the unincorporated communities for new subdivisions, we also cannot prohibit middle housing types in a new subdivision proposal in our unincorporated communities either. Right, so in terms of equity of application, that applies in our unincorporated communities and our cities and their UGBs. So it is not unique to Nehalem. But we are doing the review of this proposal because of the intergovernmental agreement we have with the city of Nehalem to provide land use support services. But even though we do the review, it is still their code. Mhm. Director, I don't know if Director Lady has any final comments either, so I don't want to forget him as we go through this important part.
No final comments.
Okay.
I guess I have not exactly a question, but if you could talk a little about it, and it's complicated by the fact that this is Nehalem code, not our code.
Mhm.
How does, Senate Bill 406 affect existing roads?
Senate Bill 406 does not impact road systems.
Does not consider them, really?
No, the land division criteria are designed, the traffic impact study, the infrastructure evaluations, all of that is intended to be evaluated based on what's proposed and what the zone allows. Right? But Senate Bill 406 in and of itself, the primary purpose of it was to follow middle housing code laws that the state had developed that really focus on allowing middle housing types, which are those ADU, single family, duplex, triplex, and a cottage cluster as outright permitted uses.
I remember seeing somewhere in the staff report or the applicant's presentation that this is not, that there wasn't an option for cottage cluster here. Am I making that up?
Yeah, the Senate Bill 406 would have required it in this zone. Yes, so it is part of that. Like the county's program, they do have development standards for open space, setbacks, parking, etc. But the requirement under that legislation is to allow it in any residential zone in the cities, UGBs and unincorporated communities.
But it would have to meet the criteria
That's right.
for everywhere.
Yes, including service provider letters,
Yes.
road, like, well, it is a private road, but yes, all of those other pieces still apply. Fire department, radio, fire letters.
Right.
Mhm.
I asked, sorry,
Yes.
but can I ask, was all this infrastructure that was put in prior to final approval, does the county, is that in violation of any county, I don't know, rule, standard, whatever? I mean, these, that was put in, and as I think, Chris mentioned, it was kind of, it's now and after.
That is right. So what we discovered was that the conditions of approval that were tied to those initial decisions in 2022 and 2023. So if you recall, they talked about providing final road construction
Right.
designs. They talked about
Right.
working with the city and sanitary district and
Right.
others. To our knowledge, those conditions of approval were not followed when the work began. I would say the enforcement piece of all of this for compliance is the process we're going through tonight.
And how is it in enforcement if it's just simply acknowledging that the work was done?
Well, I think,
Second.
yeah, that's a good question. I think it goes back to a couple of things. So Director Lady talked about requiring test results, probably
Right.
some,
Yeah.
test pits and borings for the road construction. The other pieces of that are the city engineers, the engineer of record, who is Jason Morgan from Civil Engineering, the Halem Bay Wastewater Agency coming forward with that documentation to say, what has been installed has met our requirements.
Did the city have to permit those infrastructure development?
So most of it would fall under county permitting for utilities because it's in the UGB.
So there were no permits given for the work that was done since the.
There were the land use decision approvals that required that the applicant work with the city and other jurisdictions. Some of them have permitting processes, some of them would be reviews and inspections.
But no permits were gotten.
To my knowledge, they did get the 1200C permit from DEQ for the grading, so I do recall signing the land use compatibility statement for that. And obviously, they've gone through a wetland delineation, but like PUD, I'm not sure what any permitting through them would have looked like, but it's my understanding they've been working within the streetlights as they.
But the roads, the
It's been-
drainage,
Right.
all done without.
Which is also why we asked for the compliance letter from Jason Morgan as the engineer of record, and then also the follow-up from the geotechnical evaluation, because there were recommendations for infrastructure installation that were also initially part of that geologic hazard report. So those certifications by those licensed professionals is really what we're looking for to
So
say.
no consequences to what has happened up to now.
Right, so the consequence could be to require that everything be tore out and redone.
Or a fine or civil action. I'm not a lawyer. I don't-
Right. So then so that gets into the other piece. What I will say is that as soon as I discovered that this situation had unfolded the way it had, I called the property owner, Mr. Sheldon, immediately. And to his credit, he took immediate action to assemble his team and we started meeting right away. So I would say, looking at the department's philosophy of compliance is our goal. I do believe that Mr. Sheldon and his team are trying to get there. If we would not be here tonight, going through this hearing proceedings with this new application that they did have to pay for, I mean, we've started all over. The other remedy, if compliance wasn't desired or willing to be done, it would probably go to justice court. So we're here. I agree with Director Lady, the situation is not ideal. But moving forward, if there's an opportunity that the planning commission agrees for compliance through what Director Lady and others have recommended. And if you feel there's adequate evidence in the record, then we can get there. You know, if not, we can look at other conditions of approval to make some adjustments to what's been done and continue our work.
Go right ahead, sorry.
Additional question about the resource lands, the farm and forest lands to the north. Are those lots designed to allow for the required setbacks from the resource land?
They are specifically the farm zone, which is what the city of Nehalem ordinance focuses on. And that's where that 50-foot road right of way serves also as the buffer.
And adding on to that, I understand that that the road is the buffer, but will there be something that runs with the deed in the CCNRs? Or does Nehalem not do that?
They would not require that. I think that as long as that road stays where it is, then that setback compliance is demonstrated.
Not I understand that I'm next to resource land and usual practices.
They
can
do
be-
not have that declaratory statement requirement like we do.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
thank
that's
you
what I
for
was
asking that. Yeah, no, that
Okay.
is not part of their program.
All right,
Well, the resource lands are outside of the UGB.
Correct. Right. Yes. And, you know, even with that 50-foot road right of way, I mean, obviously, we're still checking setbacks because there are other setbacks that are still going to apply at the time of development of each of the individual lots. So we're still gonna do a site plan review. There's other things we're gonna look at to make sure what is moving forward is, you know, when we permit that those requirements are here too.
thank you.
So,
So when Public Works, it has to do various things as part of your due diligence as you go through the applications. Do you calculate your charges based on the work that they have to do?
yes, so the fees take into account the review process and our roles in that space in between tentative plat approval and final plat approval. And then there is a fee for final plat review that the department collects because Director Lady, a lot of his work is now in between these two phases, right? Because that's when construction ideally is supposed to occur. So what is charged for Public Works is that time of their review.
So it's not a fixed, it's what actually has to go into the. review.
It's fixed and it's not fixed. There's a fixed base amount fee and then it's so much per lot. And what we have done in our fee schedules is I have calculated what the average time is that we spend. So that's how we calculate that fee. And then the final plat review process consists of me compiling all the letters, all the documentation. I use the conditions of approval for tentative plat as a checklist. And I have to go through and make sure everything's satisfied. And between tentative plat and final plat, I also work with Public Works, I work with the city, I work with the fire department and others to make sure that that coordination of that work is being done.
And of course, the reason I'm asking is reading Chris's email or what it was coming back, and what he needs to do now. If that's work that would have been easier, simpler, less expensive, time consuming.
Yeah.
They have to go back, and is that gonna be, I mean, we talked about consequences of doing something and then having to go back and prove it after the fact. If that's more expensive and if that at least couldn't be transferred to this. I mean, I know it's outside of our
Yeah.
decision. but
I would say, I think that, you know, the fees for this, because with the new application, the department doesn't waive fees. Right, and there is no reinstatement, like half charge, so they had to pay
Yeah, I
the
understand.
full fees to look at this again.
Okay,
I appreciate you
it's
asking.
the frustration of that we're here again with this. And what's been done up to this point.
It was certainly a surprise.
There are still lots of things like that that we don't have to look at.
That's right. Yeah,
We've had several cases here where compliance was more important than punishment. I hate to use the term punishment, but in general, I mean, we have, just to bring people in, I know there's a couple things that are frustrating, but this is one of them.
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
I have a couple of comments about the conditions of approval.
Yeah, I've got a few highlighted, so we'll see if we're aligning here on this.
I'll do the easy one first, number 12. Where it says, to an approved upland location or place behind, it should be placed with a D.
Thank you.
And the other one is number 6.
Okay.
And, I think in the first sentence should end with a period after the word stormwater facility design and delete the words requirements deemed necessary to serve the development. I think those are just confusing.
Okay.
And then in the next sentence, the last sentence that begins, this includes the following requirements, change that to the applicant / owners shall comply with the following. And then A through E.
Mhm.
In A, where at the third line in A, where it says the applicant needs to, the applicant shall modify the drainage easement. In B, at the end, this document shall, not should, be added to the CCNRs. On C, again, this document shall be added to the CCNRs. D, conditions and restrictions shall address road and stormwater facilities.
Mhm. Thank you. Do you think that, and, anything that Dr. Lady has shared tonight needs to be added? It is in the record, his email that further specifies the test results.
Do we need a general statement to accept his recommendations added to this?
So my recommendation would be add an F that says, and any other requirements outlined in the email dated.
Yeah,
Change E with that. Break E and replace it with that.
In his email from June 9th at 4:46 is the one you have a copy of today. It would be the paragraph that reads applicant, I would say shall submit field inspection reports for all completed portions of the subdivision. Tolman County Public Works may require post-construction inspections, including but not limited to core hole samples and potholing. Final plat approval will be contingent upon satisfactory inspections approved by Tillamook County Public Works. So we could just replace what is in E with this.
yeah.
If I may, Commissioner LaFrance and Madam Chair, since we're talking about conditions that have been recommended. On number 5, the Nehalem Bay Wastewater Agency did submit comments that the improvements have been installed to their satisfaction. So, the second sentence of condition of approval number 5 could be deleted.
Already been done.
Because it's been done, but I do think it is relevant to leave that condition that requires letters of availability at the time of individual lot development.
Can we just delete the second sentence?
Yes. I was thinking. Um. And then on recommended condition of approval number 8. So it requires a statement from the project engineer certifying facility and infrastructure improvements were constructed in a manner consistent with the requirements and recommendations outlined in the geologic hazard report. I have this marked because Jason Morgan did provide statements, however, considering the conditions of approval required by Public Works, as they do their investigation and inspections for the systems that have already been built, if there are any requirements or any modifications, it may necessitate an updated conformance letter for the geologic hazard report. So my recommendation would be that we actually leave condition of approval number 8 for that reason, unless you feel it would be appropriate to take it out. I've seen enough to where sometimes
Yeah.
if there are modifications, you know, it could be just simply that Mr. Morgan provides an updated letter that just
Mhm.
says after Public Works review and investigations and inspections, you know, everything remains compliant.
Well, leaving number 8 in then, if the letter has already been received, that's good.
Right.
If there are changes required, then you need another letter.
Yeah.
So
Right.
we'll cover that.
Yes.
Thank you. That's kind of, because I want to be fair to the applicant, acknowledging that that letter has been submitted as part of the record, but just understanding we are not yet done
Yep.
with this process. So, okay. And that was in the other comment I had about the conditions of approval. Yes,
I think the applicant has a question.
I don't think they can respond unless we reopen the hearing and you take more public comment or we set it over. Madam Chair, I will leave that to you and the commission to decide.
Did you close the hearing testimony?
Will we?
No, I didn't.
Will we have ended public testimony?
Yeah.
But if we open it back up for more applicant presentation, I'm just concerned that we may have to leave the public record open.
Yes.
Which would delay
Yeah,
tonight.
instead, leave it.
Knowing that the applicant can hear me, this could greatly prolong this process if I answer your question. Dawn, did you have any other comments on the,
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any other comments on the conditions?
Madam Chair, I would also say could probably strike the floodplain development permit as we've received that tonight.
Yes.
So I would just get rid of including an approved floodplain development permit.
And where is that?
Condition of approval number 2.
There it is. Yes.
Or I would leave the word including.
So
Or, well, we could just leave it
let's
as,
just leave it. It's there.
okay,
We received it. Yeah.
okay. So then I can just check that off at the time of the
Yes.
plat review.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm fine with that. I just wanted to acknowledge that we did receive that
Yeah.
after the staff report had been published.
And I do appreciate that the applicant went back and had the engineer and others
Yes.
renew their comments.
curious, does Nahalem have lighting standards that the new lights were put into with downward facing lights or anything? I don't know what their standards are.
They do have lighting requirements in their ordinance. And the lighting requirements also have to satisfy fire department
Yeah.
requirements and Tillamook PUD. So in terms of an actual dark skies ordinance, I do not believe that they have that, but
In terms of, it's back to my general concern about Bob's Creek, there's probably nothing in the condition of approval as, I mean, something that we would do as a planning commission to try to ensure other protections other than just the mitigation plan that they got with ODF and W and the permit they got from the state DEQ. Other than just a general urging, I guess, CCNRs, if they put something in that would actually further protect the creek drainage.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Isn't that covered by, number 2, where the applicant shows they know and comply with all regulations?
Yeah, they are complying. I mean, they have the letter from ODF and W, they've got the DEQ permit. They've got a mitigation plan that's been approved. They're meeting the 15-foot buffer, which is like, there's not, you know, so they're complying. I think what I would hope for, but I don't think we can put as a condition is something more than compliance, and that's what I was suggesting.
yeah. I was just looking back to their code to see, Commissioner Siebert, I don't think that we can. I guess I
Yeah.
would ask, what is it that you would be specifically interested in doing?
Well, I mean, one thing would be a limitation of use of chemicals, fertilizer, other kinds of things. Roundup, that stuff, anything that would get into the stormwater that can't be filtered out by plantings that would impact the rearing habitat in that part of the creek. But this, again, I agree with you. I don't think there's anything we can say. They're meeting compliant, you know, as you point out, it's just a remark.
Just looking to see.
I think there's a long-term solution, which Chris kind of alluded to earlier about the way the creek has split. And there could be a way that, of course, you can never tell fish which way to go or to spawn, but they tend to find the right spots. One part of that could be used for the drainage.
So what the city of Nahalem code says. It states in approving a conditional use, the city, so in this case, it would be the county. May impose such conditions if it deems appropriate to ensure that the intent of this section, this is the conditional use section, is carried out. Conditions may include, but are not limited to, increasing the required lot size or yard dimensions, reducing building height and size of buildings, controlling access points, increasing off-street parking, street widths, signs. So it talks about diking, fencing, landscaping, screening berms, or other items to protect adjacent or nearby property, increasing pipe size or other facility installment requirements, such as for fire protection, water flow, sewage, or storm drainage, and require improvements to transportation facilities. So those are the examples that they give. And so it's intended to carry out this section, the intent of this section. So when we look at the decision criteria, I guess if the commission wanted to consider imposing any additional requirements, we would have to tie it back to the criteria of the conditional use.
Yeah.
And I would say that the conditional use is required not for the Riverview Meadows development, but it's required for the intersection improvements that are specifically related to Riverview Drive and North Fork Road. So if you're also thinking kind of bigger picture of the development as a whole, that in and of itself is not part of the conditional use process.
Right.
And I did not close the hearing to public testimony, and I do so at this point. Is that T? Are there any further questions for staff or discussion of conditions?
Third time may be a charm.
I think they are ready to hustle to the finish line. And meet those requirements.
Ready to entertain a motion?
Madam Chair, could you articulate how the motion would be since we have
Right.
the tentative plat approval plus
Yeah.
the conditional use and
And the geohazard.
the geohazard, of course.
Do we need to do the conditional use separately?
There are three separate decisions, right? So it's a consolidated review. The conditions of approval have all been consolidated as part of that.
So it can all go together?
Yeah, I think that what I would probably do is recommend this subject to the conditions of approval as part of the motion for each one with three separate motions.
But three separate
I
motions?
think you should still do three separate.
Okay.
motions.
All right.
If anything were to be appealed, then all three decisions get appealed.
Yes.
And not all three decisions may need to be appealed. My recommendation would be to start with the conditional use because those improvements are tied to the subdivision.
Yes.
So if that conditional use is not approved, it makes some of these other things moot.
But the conditions of approval, would they be attached to the tentative plat approval or to the, how do they apply to the,
Right,
it almost seems like with the way it's all worded, they would have to all go together
they,
since it's a,
yeah,
and it says it's a request for consolidated.
they can absolutely all go together. Just, yeah, I can't imagine why. You know, if,
We'd have to parse out the conditions to make
Yeah.
sure it applies to each one.
or the, yeah, I mean, really the piece of the conditional use approval, even the mitigation plan still goes with the subdivision.
And And if any one of these are denied, then how can the whole thing go through?
That's true.
So it seems like it's all or nothing.
We can do it all or, I'm happy to follow your lead on that. Whatever you'd like to do. Can be done either way. It works for me.
Ready?
I'm ready. We're ready.
Madam Chair, I propose that we approve number 851-26-000055 PLNG, a request for consolidated review and approval of tentative subdivision plat for Riverview Meadows Phase 2 and approval of the geologic hazard report review request number 851-26-000056 PLNG. And the conditional use request number 851-26-000139 PLNG, a request to allow for road encroachment into the 15-foot riparian buffer along Bob's Creek. And the approval is based on the staff report, the oral and written testimony, and the discussion among commission members, and to include the recommended conditions of approval as modified, numbers 1 through 17, except with the yeah, 1 through 17.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve 851-26-0000. Did I get all 4 of them? 4055 PLNG. The consolidated review, the geohazard report, and the conditional use request with conditions 1 through 18 through 17 as modified. All in favor, raise your right hand. Your eyes.
Thank you.
Mhm. Thank you. I'd like to take a 5-minute break.
Thank you.
Sarah, is there anything,
Okay, Madam Chair, I took us off mute.
So we need an authorization for the chair to sign appropriate orders.
So moved.
Second.
Then move in the second to authorize the chair to sign appropriate orders. All in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you. 4 ayes. Elections.
We just decided to keep it on the agenda.
Yeah.
And then when we have all of you
Everybody
here,
here.
then we'll,
Okay.
so it's just.
Still
just
think
gonna
it's a bad
keep
idea.
it.
We were gonna get you last time, I think. Like you usually, because you were.
Okay, out of all the hearings, I missed the least number of hearings. I will just let you know.
That's true.
Don't even.
I have the data for you if you want to share.
Yeah, I don't even need the data.
I
I
got to be a
know.
lieutenant on the fire department once. We're going on vacation.
Yeah.
Elections.
All right.
Okay, so we're done with elections right now. Anything about administrative decisions? Anybody have any comments on those? Hearing none. Housing Commission update. I'll do a brief one because it's kind of, I'll do a brief one. We had an interesting, process with how government works and how it doesn't work sometimes, sort of apropos of, retroactive zoning. There was a, grant program that we were very excited about called Merle. And, it turns out that it's not really ready to be rolled out yet, in spite of what the presiding agencies and people presenting were led to understand. And in the course of that, some of the applicants for Housing Commission funds based their financials on their certain receipt of those funds, which aren't going to happen. So it made us review our processes again and gave me confirmation of how careful the Housing Commission is being with processes of handing out public money and doing it in a way that remains consistent, open, ethical, and for the greatest good for the greatest number of people in the face of sometimes things just don't work out the way we want them to work out. So we had a long discussion about how we can make good for this applicant and future applicants, and we just have to deal with the situation. It was an interesting meeting.
State or federal grant sorts, or what kind of, what was its base?
It's state.
It's a state loan program with a sponsoring jurisdiction like a county or a city that then rolls from a loan agreement between the jurisdiction and the state to a grant to the developer. And then the loan is paid back by the jurisdiction through collection of property taxes. So the developer gets it as a grant. Sorry, Gail, to jump out.
No,
Right.
thank you for doing that.
But
Yeah.
the jurisdiction actually is on the hook for the loan repayment.
And well, I imagine the county commissioners would have to approve any such loan.
Yes. And so to that, Monday afternoon, I had a meeting with representatives from the governor's office, OHCS and Regional Solutions. The good news is Tillamook County has been very vocal about concerns about this program. We want it, but
And
it's,
let me interrupt and say
Yeah.
Tillamook County is one of the only counties that got involved with this.
right,
So,
counties or cities.
Yeah.
Right, both.
Mhm.
But we have been very vocal in relaying our concerns of, we want to believe in this program. We see the good this program can do, but the liability and risk to a jurisdiction being on the hook for repayment among other program pieces is very concerning. Our concerns have been heard. So Monday, there was a meeting to start talking about what fixes through OHCS and the governor's office could be done to address the concerns that we have spearheaded bringing back on behalf of cities and counties. So I was very encouraged by that meeting. I'll be giving an update at some point, but you are correct. At this point, the program is just on hold. We just don't have enough people in place or support to do it. And then I believe the Housing Commission will be taking a hiatus and will be reconvening in September.
Right.
I wasn't at the last meeting.
Yes, that's, yes.
Was that?
And that was pretty much the meat of the meeting was, a lot of conversation, a lot of really careful conversation from all angles of how to deal with this. So that's it for the Housing Commission report. So is there a Department of Community Development report?
Yes, I will be brief because we will be back here in 2 weeks. So we have, I believe, a variance coming before you for a project in Nesco. In 2 weeks. So Melissa's the project planner for that. You will get your staff reports and everything published and mailed to you next Thursday. In that same vein for housing, so we have officially kicked off the second phase of Senate Bill 406. So that is the housing needs assessment and the housing capacity analysis. I will be working with the cities now on the final resolutions because the county, me specifically, we are taking the lead in that work and doing that work in partnership with the cities. We're doing the bulk of the work. I'm the project manager for that grant with DLCD. So we're working on the resolutions with the cities for that. I've started meeting with each of the cities and the project team. So it's one consultant this time. 406 was 3 different consulting firms that help between the county and all of the cities, but we've consolidated it for this part of Senate Bill 406. Oceanside Neighborhood Association and the Oceanside Zoning Code updates. I've kept you guys in the loop of kind of the progress of that. I am in final draft phase with the county's legal team and DLCD. So we are on track. I'll be getting Measure 56 notices out as soon as I can. With our draft work being done and bring those back to you. I am really pleased to share how productive this last process has been. Majority support of the community for the concepts that I will be bringing forward to you in code amendment updates.
I looked at those survey results and of course you can tell pretty much what areas they were coming from.
Yeah. Right. But I would say it has been collaborative. The vitriol and the controversy that we saw and felt during the last process is not there. And I'm just really thankful for that. And the leadership of the community of all different, people of all different opinions that came together to help me do that work. With that, Neoconi was the other fix-it from the other pieces of the code amendments that we did last year. So I am now meeting actively with them. I'm following the same process I did with Oceanside. So we have a meeting next week to review their data of development patterns and what actually the size of dwellings have been and what does that look like in terms of floor area ratios, size of dwellings, etc. And then working with Nescoin on their community plan updates. So I have a good portion of tomorrow blocked out to give Tom Sipe, who is with Guy and I on their subcommittee to finish my homework assignments that will include some feedback from him to get those to Tom over the weekend so that we can meet on Monday as the subcommittee on the community plan updates. Our new planner one that's been with us for about 6 months resigned. His lifelong dream and opportunity to be a park ranger came to fruition. So he gave us 2 weeks notice that he's out. So Melissa and I are shifting because of the staffing changes that occurred last year with planning. I went ahead and entered into a contract with 3J Consulting to help overflow with processing land use applications when I needed to, because we have been so busy just for Melissa and I to do that work alone. It's just not feasible to get it all done in a timely manner. So that contract is still in place and, if we need to use it, we will. This summer has not been as busy as previous summers. So there's a lull. I met with HR today. I have a plan in place potentially to help cover some gaps. Do some recruitment, potentially some, opportunities for advancement within the department, which we always love. So, working through that right now. So, I would say those are probably the big things, but, you guys have a potentially busy calendar coming up and it seems like it's feast or famine. So thank you all for your willingness, Chris included, to be here in response to these time-sensitive reviews.
One thing that came up, and I sent you an email a couple of weeks ago, and very wasn't a critical thing, but it came up at one of the community meetings when we were talking about firework ordinance. And somebody brought up that the people are shooting guns within the village, what we call the village. And it reminded me it happens every year. It usually happens in the summer when we get people visiting. They do target practicing along in the dunes there and whatever. So I sent you an email because I looked through was there anything in our ordinances, unincorporated communities, anything that says that the use of a firearm is prohibited? And if not, could we consider it?
It would be through the sheriff's office.
So it's not a land use, it's not something covered in land use.
No, it's not.
But we do it came up as part of this fireworks thing. We were talking about the dangerous use of fireworks within the community. And I thought, well, how about firearms? Which was what this person brought up at the meeting.
Yeah, well, and that's why the fireworks ordinance is also not under community development.
Right.
Right, and it has not been, like, so the CAC has not been involved in that because those matters are outside of the regulatory scope of the land use program or building codes. And so that I think is something to definitely talk to the sheriff about.
Okay.
Yeah, I know that the Nesco and CAC recently wrote a draft letter about, public safety and concerns that they want to send out to agencies and others, urging them to, really start imposing rules related to fireworks and others. I have a meeting with Commissioner Scar about that in the morning.
Well, they testified
Right.
with the commissioners, and I mean, it was well, I thought, both what they presented was really well done.
Yeah, I saw a copy of the letter, but
Yeah.
surprisingly, not all things begin and end in community development. I mean, most of them do, but there's a very small margin of things that do not. But
Even
yes,
though it is the center of the universe.
apparently so. Yes, for better or worse. But I would
Well,
say
you asked our opinion on it, though.
I sent the notice that they were having a hearing.
See, so.
Right, because in my role as the CAC liaison, I thought
Yeah,
the communities would be interested in knowing that. And it sounds like some good things came out of that. So yes, there's a fireworks ordinance, there's a dog license ordinance. We're getting ready. I have a meeting with County Council tomorrow about the code enforcement ordinance updates. We've both been working on that. So I'll have more updates for you guys on all those things in the next couple of meetings, but there's a lot happening. There's a lot going on, for sure.
Is that it?
So that concludes my report.
Anything else? We're 9:00. We are adjourned.
Yeah.